Okay, hello, good afternoon, let's start. So today we are wrapping up. I'm going to try to draw together what we've been saying so far as the details of informativeness, sense and reference, and causal theories goes. Sorry? In a moment. You'll see why. And on Friday, I'll try and put the ideas about causal theories of reference in a more general perspective. And then on Monday, we move on to Unit 2. Oh boy. And Putnam's Brains in a Vat article. And you'll start to see how all the issues we've been discussing, I keep saying this, have been quite narrowly focused, but they really have a lot of ramifications. And with Putnam's article, you really start to see big ramifications of the issues we've been talking about. Today I want to begin by going over stuff about informativeness and uninformativeness that we were dealing with in Frege. Then look at, I'll do the screen in a moment, I want to draw on the board for a second. Then look at how Evans's ideas about dominant source apply to natural kind terms. And finally I want to do something else. I want to talk about the contrast between causal theories of reference and Searle Frege style cluster theories of reference. Okay, so this thing about informativeness and uninformativeness, I want to begin by bringing out that on a causal theory of reference, it's very difficult to see how there can be uninformative identities. Where we began was with this contrast between informative and uninformative identities. An uninformative identity being something like A is identical to A, and an informative identity being something like A is identical to B. And one reaction to the problems we're going to have about how there can be an uninformative identity would be to say, well, maybe there aren't any uninformative identities. Maybe we've just made a discovery that all identity statements are informative, even A is identical to A. I don't think that sounds right straight off. Does that sound right straight off? No, that doesn't sound right straight off. And I think there's even something like a proof that it can't be right. Because one way you make the difference between an informative and an uninformative identity is by looking at what happens in this kind of argument, where you say A is F, A is G, so A is both F and G. Is that argument valid? Looks all right to me, right? I mean, if you know the premises are true, you know the conclusion's true, right? And you must be able to engage in arguments like that. If you're to build up a body of information on a person, if you're to develop a dossier, you've got to be able to put together all the bits of information you have as all jointly true of one and the same person. In contrast, consider this argument: A is F, B is G, so A is both F and G. Right? Valid or invalid? Very good. So how would you make it valid? Very good. Right. So that's one way of getting at what's meant by saying uninformative here, that this is a truth of logic, that the identity here is something you can rely on in this kind of inference, whereas the truth of this kind of identity isn't a law of logic. Now you might say, well actually, you need a premise here, A is identical to B, but really, over here, you need a premise too. There's a suppressed premise, A is identical to A, right? So what you mean is, this one is identical to this one. You've really got a hidden premise there, yeah? But if that was right, then you still need to know that this A is identical to this A, and this A is identical to this A. And you say, well, maybe there really is a hidden premise here. Then you're actually going to need some more hidden premises. You see what I mean? If you need a premise to connect this A to this A, you say, that's it here, A is A. Now it's valid, even if the identity is informative. But you're still going to need a premise to connect A to A and A to A. You see what I mean? You need another premise. You need something like, well, if we call this one A1 and this one A2 and this one A3 and this one A4, then we need another premise, A5 is identical to A6, to connect this one to this one. We need another premise, A7 is identical to A8. But then it's okay, right? No? You need another premise, right? In fact, you need 4 more premises at this point, okay? You see how this is going to go? I mean, this way madness lies. We'll be here all day. So at some point, you've got to say, no, this just goes through the way it is. Right? That's just fine the way it is. So this identity has got to be uninformative. There have got to be uninformative identities. And really, that's already implicit when you think about this. I mean, what you said was, you can make this valid by adding the premise, A is identical to B, right? But if that's going to make it valid, then you've got to be able to just use the fact that this A is the same as this A, and this B is the same as this B. But then the identity of this A with this A has to be uninformative, and this B has to be uninformative. Otherwise, well, you can see what's going to happen. You're going to need some more premises to say that this A is this A, and this B is this B. But then, you see how it goes? Yeah? So we've just got to have uninformative identities. It really is basic to all your thinking and reasoning about particular objects. But and the causal theory is hard to see how that can happen. So let me. Okay, I just found this the other day in a novel. But you often see that at the start of a novel, right? Names, characters, places, and incidents either are the product of the authors of imagination or are used fictitiously, and any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events or places is purely coincidental. You see that at the start of lots of novels, right? This, if you think about it, this endorses the causal theory of reference. It's saying there might be something that matches the pictures given in this book, but that's not what we're talking about. It's only coincidental. There's no causal connection. And suppose you, as in fact I was reading Lake Wobegon days, and you find that actually somewhere in Minnesota, there is what's it called, Mist County. It really is there. Garrison Keillor didn't know that, but there really is a little town, Lake Wobegon, that really matches his description. And suppose that they refer to real places with the names that Garrison Keillor is using. Still, the names in the book wouldn't be referring to those places. Any resemblance is entirely coincidental. If he says something scandalous about someone in his novel, he's cleared himself. Should be worried. The whole point is he's cleared himself by this. If it's purely coincidental, then even if something matches all the descriptions, that's not what he was talking about. He might have given a very good description of you. If it was entirely coincidental, he wasn't saying anything scandalous about you, even though his description really matched you. So long as the similarity is entirely coincidental, he's in the clear. On the other hand, if you find out that he was listening to a whole bunch of gossip about you, and that's what he wrote down in the book, then you can sue. This is not a purely theoretical matter, right? I mean, the causal theory of reference really matters here. You would rely on it if you were suing for libel. If you could establish a causal connection, you would be showing he was talking about you, and then it would be actionable. So I think in common practice, we do actually put some weight on the idea of a causal connection being important for reference. So if that's right, then suppose you get a remark like Lake Woebegone is a Lake Woebegone. Then it's not enough for these two uses of the name for that to be uninformative. It's not enough that there's the same cluster of descriptions associated with the two names. Because this might happen in the actual Lake Woebegone, and it might be just what's occurred to him, so he just dreamt it up. They still wouldn't be talking about the same place, even if the clusters of descriptions associated were the same. Right? And let me give a real example. The general point is, if you're going to have uninformativeness, you've got to have causal connections between the individual use of the name and the object. And even that is not enough. It's not enough that when you use this Lake Woebegone, you're a cluster of descriptions associated with the name, you're a cluster of descriptions associated with the name, and a causal link to the real community, and a causal link to the same community. That's not enough for this to be uninformative. Because after all, it might be that Garrison Keillor actually came upon the town of Lake Woebegone and wrote about it. We all think it's fictional. You know what I mean when I say Lake Woebegone and Garrison Keillor and all that? Okay, right. Well, the point of that example is kind of lost in that case. Okay, this is a novel. Garrison Keillor is the name of the writer, right? The book is about a fictional community called Lake Woebegone, right? That's all right. Okay, so I assume that this is a fictional community. Right? But let's suppose it's not. Let's suppose he came upon this secluded town and actually wrote up pretty much what he found there. And in the town, they all talk about it pretty much the way he talked about it, using the same name. When you and I use the name Lake Woebegone, we take it that it's fictional. When someone in the town uses the name, they think it's real. But the same causal connection exists between our cluster of descriptions and the cluster of descriptions that the people in the town are using. They both get a causal connect back to the original Lake Woebegone. But it's still informative to be told it's the same thing. Let me give you a different example. Suppose Charles Dickens, how about Charles Dickens? Author of many books, David Copperfield, right? Wrote a lot about London, right? London, okay. London, England, right? Now, when Dickens is writing about London, England, there's nothing going on there to say it's fictional. He's just writing about a real place, London, England, and what's fictional are the descriptions of what's going on with the people there. But the town is really enough. But suppose that when I read Bleak House or whatever, then I think this is all fictional. I think the town London that he's talking about is fictional. I think it's a name like Lake Woebegone. I think it's meant to be the name of a fictional place. That could happen. Right. So I have all these descriptions that I pick up from Dickens that I associate with the town London. There actually is a causal connection back to the town London through Dickens. Now let's suppose that at that point I actually visit England. I visit London. I say, good heavens, there's a fictional town with the very same name. I wonder if it was suggested to him by this place. I say it's not the same as his town at all, of course. It's much more modern. But they didn't have motor cars and so on. But I think it's just a coincidence that these two places. It's the same name. Really, causal connection back to the same town. But if you tell me London is London, that might hit me like a bombshell. That might be a complete revelation. Yeah? The thing about causal chains is, how should I put this? What's before your mind is the cluster of descriptions. The causal chain back to the object can shift, and you not know about it. And that means that the identity is always going to be potentially informative, because you're always being told, you're always getting the information when you're told London is London, A is A, that the causal connect from this sign is going back to the same place as the causal connect from that sign. How could that be a logical truth? How could there be an uninformative identity? If you've got a causal theory of reference, it looks completely impossible to have an uninformative identity. All identities are going to be informative. You see the problem? Let me put that as a question. Do you see the problem? The problem is there have got to be uninformative identities. Otherwise, thinking and reasoning about individual objects would be impossible. But if you get a causal theory of reference, all the identities turn out to be informative. You're always getting some information about the world when you're told something like London is London. You see that? Yeah. Go ahead. We'll come to him. Well, yes, I think that's right. I mean, it's hard to see how you could have terms referring to objects at all unless you had the possibility of uninformative identities, so you could think and reason about a single individual. Well, so suppose you go back to this thing. You've got A is F and A is G, so A is both F and G, right? That's what I'm saying. It's really basic that you've got to be able to do that kind of inference if you're going to think about particular objects at all, right? You give me that for the moment. But to do this kind of reasoning, where you put together two bits of information that you individually have about an object, separately have about an object, and you say, those properties are jointly true of that thing. Yeah? You've got to be able to do that. Sorry? Yes, right. To be thinking about a single thing with many properties at all. Yeah. But then, if this is London and this is London, you see what I mean? If you've got these two uses there of the same sign, it's still going to be informative to be told it's the same object you're referring to on a causal theory of reference, because it's going to be informative to be told that this causal chain leads back to the same object as that causal chain. So you're going to need the premise London is London, A is A. But that's when you're lost, because now you need the premise A is identical to A. And now how do you know that this A is referring to the same thing as this one, and this A is referring to the same thing as this one? You're not going to, if you get into a jam at this point, you have no way out. It's kind of hotting up. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So once you pull London is London, you're like, oh my goodness, London is London. That's important that time. But then, like, 6 months London is London again, you're like, oh, I already knew that. That's London. Very good. Yeah. But see, in that sense, it's uninformative to be told that for you guys to be told that the morning star is the evening star. I mean, if there's one thing you have learnt in this class, is that the morning star is the evening star, right? So there's that notion of uninformative, where it means something like, well, I knew that already. You know what I mean? But that's not what Frege means. Frege means you couldn't figure it out just by thinking about it, right? I mean, even if you didn't have all that information you have already, you could still figure out that the morning star is the morning star if you just reflected for a moment. That's his idea. Whereas if you just threw away all the information you have already, you could not figure it out just by thinking about it, that the morning star is the evening star. Yeah, you see what I mean? So the point here is, you couldn't figure it out just by thinking about it that London is London. You're always helping yourself with some information you have already. Yeah, and that's the point of imagining the guy who doesn't have that information. Yeah. That's right. That's my point, right? So if this identity is informative, yeah, then what isn't informative? Well, I'm not really saying Dickens is London. What I'm doing is I'm picking up. See, when he uses the word London, he's just using it the same way as everybody else, right? He doesn't have a special use of London. He's not talking about my magical London located in Sirius B or something. Do you see what I mean? He's just talking about the regular London the same way everybody else talks about it. And when I pick up on his use of the term London, I might not realize it, but I'm just picking up on the regular term London. No, it would be a very different set of stories if it was London in a parallel universe. Do you see what I mean? I mean, when people write stories about, when Raymond Carver writes stories about Los Angeles, right? He's writing about Los Angeles. He's not writing about some fictional place. He's writing about the real town. The story's set in the real town. And it's nothing but a pack of lies, right? But they're about that very place. I mean, it's not science fiction. It's not set in some other galaxy. You see what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I asked you. No, carry on, please. I'm just joking. Right. Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, I don't think. Well, if you just think about what goes on with these stories about actual cities, yeah? And look, I've just been reading the Rough Guide to New York, right? And at the back of all these rough guides, they have appendices where they list a bunch of books or stories or plays or films that are set in New York, right? And if you were right, that would be a complete waste of time, right? Because none of these things are really set in New York, right? They're all set in some other place or some entirely fantastical place. But the whole reason they put them into these travel guides is that they're set in that very town. Yeah? Otherwise, there wouldn't be any connection. You see what I mean? Yeah? I mean, you're right, there's a pack of lies that's being told about New York and all these fictional stories, but they're lies about that place. Yeah. Were you reading? Yeah. Okay, let me try to address that in just a second. Were you going to raise something? I didn't put you on the spot. But... No. Okay, you then. Yeah. Okay.
I don't think that this is something that comes up just in fiction. It's kind of similar to the point that I made last week and the week before about how your idea of Aristotle has a different causal chain going back.
Right.
To Aristotle reminded. It's kind of like, under the causal theory of knowledge, in order for us to know that we're talking about, say, the same concept as Aristotle, we need to know that it's the same, that it causally links back to the same object.
Right.
Or if we use the Arnold Schwarzenegger example, I might think of him as the action movie star, and then somebody else might be thinking of him as the governor, even though they are the same person. If we don't know that those different cluster of descriptions go back causally to the same person, we don't have
right.
uninformative identity. And I think that's kind of the same thing that's going on in Charles Dickens. And it's clear that when he wrote his novels that took place in London, he did not take himself to be picking up some new city. Right. He really took himself to be setting in the place that he lived.
Right. I mean, suppose that, let me just pick up the ball from you there, and suppose that you live in some grand part of Los Angeles, and I say, really, that's where you're from, tell me all about it, and you tell me about meeting all these famous people, and how easy life is, and so on, and then I also meet someone who is from some very poor, downtrodden part of the city, and they tell me all about how grim life is, and they're always getting beaten up, and so on, right? Never occurs to me it's the same city. They're both completely real uses, uses of the name Los Angeles to refer to a real city, and both of you are just using it in a regular way. You see what I mean? If you had a conversation with each other, it would never occur to you there was any ambiguity here. It's still